Welcome back. I'm so excited to be wrapping up section 1 of our guidebook unit 1, the Birchbark House. We're going to be looking at lesson 5 today and discuss the Plains Indians. We're so excited we actually began reading the Birchbark House. We analyzed how the men responded to the little girl. That's our main text of this unit, but we need a lot of background information so that we can understand what's actually going on. So today, we will read chapter 9 from the First Americans Prehistory to 1600, A History of U.S. Book 1. We'll use those context clues to determine meanings of unknown words and phrases, and we will summarize chapter 9 so that you get a good understanding of what was going on and what the people are like in our novel. If you have your student resource book, depending on where you are at this time, you will see an extension task. You may also have a summary chart in there. You may even actually have this passage. If not, we're going to read through these things and I'm going to show you those on the video. You'll also have your vocabulary chart where you're going to add more words, whether you're doing it in your student resource book or just on a sheet of paper. And then also your reading log to take down a few notes that will help us. So let's talk for just a minute about the extension task. We talked as we began the unit that you would have to do some things to analyze Christopher Columbus. Well, what knowledge and skill do I need in order to complete the end of the unit extension task? Well, first of all, we teach students, what are you supposed to do? Okay, when you look at a prompt, what do they expect? Well, you're going to end up writing a 2-page essay in response to the following prompt. Describe the changes as a result of Christopher Columbus's arrival in the New World. What effect did Columbus have on the New World? Now, we will read some things from excerpts of a letter to the treasurer of Spain. We'll review notes and handouts as we continue through this study because we don't just read our novel, The Birchbark House, we read other nonfiction passages as well. We'll learn to compare and contrast that information from texts that we have read. We will identify the similarities and differences in the point of view. Remember, we've talked about who is actually telling the story. We'll focus on identifying the points Columbus makes and the reason he provides for his actions versus the points the other texts make and the reason they provide for Columbus's actions. If Columbus is telling the story, he may tell it a lot differently than the Native Americans. We're also going to look at number 2 point, explain the relationship and interactions between Columbus and the Native Americans, drawing information from the unit text. We'll explain how the Europeans changed the Native American way of life. We're going to look at hunting, farming, landscape, religion, shelter, animals, and disease. We'll provide specific examples of interactions between Columbus and the Native Americans. Our unit today will discuss where those Native Americans live and what's going on. Finally, you'll read your essays in your groups and develop and deliver a presentation and summarize this information. So the reason I present this to you today is so that as we go through these nonfiction passages, that you can be aware that's what you're going to do at the end of the unit to make sure you understand why did it matter. It will help us maybe guide and use choices from our past to correct things for our future. So we're going to read chapter 9 in your small group with me right now. Ideally, you would have 4 prompts with 4 groups, but we're going to do each one of them together, and we're going to share what we've learned about each prompt. And it's really exciting to learn about where these Plains Indians lived and what they did. So, chapter 9. Plains Indians are not plain at all. Remember how the first Americans found a hunter's paradise in North America? Then the climate changed. Many animals like the mammoth became extinct. Much of the land dried up. It was even drier than it is now. Life became hard for the people who were hunters. They had to adapt, to change their ways. Think about that word, adapt, change your ways. They had to hunt new animals, gather new foods, and learn to plant crops. Some Indians must have longed for the good old days. Well, let's zoom back to the center of the continent. It's the year 1000. If you look out the window, you see people gathering nuts and grasses and berries. It is summer, and the sun is shining on the flat plains that make a wide ribbon across America. The ribbon stretches from Canada south to Texas, and from the Rocky Mountains east to the woodlands near the Mississippi River. Mostly, it is windy land and dry, with extremes of heat and cold. If we get out and stand for a while, you'll see yourself in the vast open landscape. Your eyes will reach for miles and miles, and wherever you look, the sky touches the earth, and neither mountains nor forests block your view. That describes the land. The people here live in a region with blizzards, tornadoes, icy cold, blistering heat, droughts, floods, and sometimes nice, balmy days like this one. Some of the plains land is prairie. Tall grasses grow on the prairie and animals feed and hide in the grass. In some places, rivers web through the plains. Where there are rivers, there are trees, and often Indians farm. But much of this land has only scruffy growth. There are few trees. Farming is difficult. Most of the people we see are nomads who keep on the move following the trail of the animals. It isn't easy hunting on foot. These plains Indians use their brains and their courage and stampede animals into traps. They use bow and arrows. All that helps, but not enough. These are among the poorest and the hungriest of the Native Americans. Now, where do they live? They live in teepees made of animal skins. It is the job of the Indian woman to put up and take down the teepee. She can do it in about an hour. If you watch, you'll see that in summer, some tribes move almost every day. They knock down their teepees and load them onto two poles held with a cross piece that forms an A. The wide end of the A drags on the ground and the other end is pulled by a dog. These Indians have few possessions. Mostly they hunt buffalo. Buffalo are fine for hunting for three reasons. They are good to eat and rich in protein. There are millions of them, perhaps 100 million in North America, and they are stupid animals. That's a nasty word, but it happens that buffaloes are not smart at all. That helps the men who hunt them. While you are controlling the capsule, how about zooming ahead to the 16th century? Do you see those men down there, right where Dorothy and Toto will live one day? That's Kansas, of course. They are Spaniards. One of them, who traveled with an explorer named Coronado, keeps a journal. In the journal, he describes what the Indians of the plains do with a buffalo after they finish eating the meat. With the skins, they build their houses. With the skins, they clothe and shoe themselves. From the skins, they make rope and also obtain wool. With the sinews, they make threads, with which they sew their clothes and also their tents. From the bones, they shape awls. The dung they use for firewood, since there is no other fuel in that land. The bladders they use as jugs and drinking containers. Definitely use all of their resources. Well, how did the pale skin then affect the hunting? From your capsule, you can see the pale-skinned men trading with the darker-skinned men. They give the Indians horses and knives. Soon those Indians will not be poor anymore. Horses will change their lives. Think about facing a herd of buffalo on foot. They will be able to gallop across the plains. They will hunt more efficiently. They will also make war more efficiently. They will travel great distances and trade with faraway peoples. They will feel free and powerful. Now, how about setting the controls for the 18th century? See those handsome Indians on horseback with feathered headdresses? They are Plains Indians. Some are people of the old tribes, and some are newcomers who have moved from eastern woods. They have created a great new Indian culture full of ceremonies, dances, horsemanship, costumes, warfare, and elegant crafts. With horses and rifles, they trade buffalo skins for guns. These Plains Indians hunt and kill large numbers of animals. No longer do they have to use every part of the animal. Now that they are affluent, they have become wasteful. The Plains Indians are deeply religious. They have many traditions and strict rules of behavior. Something happens to a man when he gets on a horse in a country where he can ride forever, a historian has written. He either feels like a god or closer to God. Now that they can hunt so effectively, they farm less. Do you see those huge herds down there? Well, of course you do. You can't miss them. Buffalo, millions and millions of them, stretch for miles across the level land. The Plains Indians depend on the buffalo for food and clothing. It's hard to believe, but by the end of the next century, the 19th, the buffalo will be almost extinct, killed by wasteful people. Who do you think the wasteful people might be? And the Plains Indians will be in trouble too. Too bad we can't stay any longer with these vigorous people. But before we go, perhaps you could trade your pocket knife and get a feathered headdress or an otter skin vest decorated with porcupine quills, or rope of fragrant sweetgrass to freshen the air in the capsule. Then put your mind in navigation controls. We're going to zip around to time and space. As we think about these Plains Indians, it is amazing what all they can do. Now, before we go any further, let's add these terms to our word wall. Plains Indian and adapt. Well, we're going to discuss in greater detail where the Plains Indians live, but obviously it was in an area of plains. And then to adapt means to be able to change your ways for where you live and what you do. And so that is what these Plains Indians had to do. Now, where did they live? Describe the land. As we said, they lived in the plains. But if we go back to the text and we remember how we would quote with textual evidence, and we would say Joy Hakem said on page 42 that the ribbon stretched from Canada south to Texas, from the Rocky Mountains east to the woodlands near the Mississippi River. That would be where they lived. Now, what was the land like? Well, vast, open. It would be tall grasses, for example. We see here in the map the area where the plains would live. Canada to Texas, the Rocky Mountains, the woodlands near the Mississippi River. Now, this is what the land might have looked like. Tall grasses on the plains. Remember, it said you could look for miles and just see the plains and the grasses. It was hard. There was scruffy growth, few trees. Farming was difficult. Okay? It was tough for them there. Well, where did they live? That explains it. But tell me the homes. Describe the homes of the Plains Indians. Look at this. They used the animal skins. Their homes were teepees made of the animal skins. They used every part of the animal. So amazing. They used such great resources. They didn't waste anything. So, what did the Plains Indians hunt and eat? How did the pale-skinned men affect how the Plains Indians hunted? Well, if you think about originally, remember they hunted with the spears, bow and arrows, and imagine, look at that buffalo. That would be a hard way to hunt, but it helped them. They were able to hunt some of them. They were wise in stampedes. But then when the pale-skinned men came, the white men, the Europeans, they were able to then trade and use horses. Look at the difference. And it's amazing how that would change your way of hunting. That's amazing. What natural resources did the Plains Indians use? The whole time, the Plains Indians, it's amazing what they used and how they used it. They built their homes from the animal skins. They made their clothes and shoes from them. They used the sinews or the muscles to make threads to sew their clothes and tents. From the bones, they made awls or types of tools. They used the dung. That's good. For fire, they used the bladders as jugs and drinking containers. I'm not sure I'd want to use an animal's bladder, but it contained their liquid. And so it was something that could be used to contain the Indians' drinking containers. They were very, very resourceful. So when we look at our TWR activity, this is going to change things up a little bit. And this is not one that we've seen before in our lessons. So we've gone through identifying fragments, looking to see if it's a complete sentence, and we've changed those and we've added those. Well, this one is to rearrange the words below into a sentence. Add the correct capitalization and punctuation, taking the information that we gained from what we just read. Canada, stretch, Texas, from, plain, south, to, the. That's weird. That doesn't make sense at all. Now, some of the ways we do this is we would put all those words on little bitty paper and we would move them around. We don't have access to do that with this lesson today, but you could do that at home. You could take these and write them and do it maybe with some groups. But if I was going to take that phrase, those groups of words, and make a sentence based on what we've read from chapter 9, we could say that the plains stretched from Canada to South Texas. And that answers the question, where did they live? Okay, well, another one that also says, the two mountains from plains, the woodlands, the rocky stretched. Wow, okay, so the plains stretched from the Rocky Mountains to the woodlands. I'll do one more and you can see how we rearrange these. In skins lived, in teepees they made animals. Well, they lived in teepees made of animal skins. Wrapping it up, bows to Indians, the hunt plains used buffalo arrows and, wow, the Plains Indians used bows and arrows to hunt buffalo. We have to put our words in order for it to make sense. That's the purpose of rearranging words so that we can understand. And a sentence is a complete thought with a subject and a predicate, but it also has to make sense. And so this is just a fun little activity that we could do that you could look at to see how we can make a complete sentence. Now, as a summary, ideally, you would write and put all your information, maybe in a paragraph. We're not quite ready for that. So we're going to fill in this chart. Now, I'm amazed with the Plains Indians. Here we see them. The Plains Indians were resourceful. They used land and natural resources around them to survive. That is the main idea of that chapter. Now, we looked at in different areas and different prompts things that were important, but overall, when you give the main idea, you're looking for just the key thing. Well, then as we go through the Plains Indians, where did they live? As we've said several times, the Plains Indians lived on a ribbon of land that stretched from Canada to South Texas, from the Rocky Mountains to the Mississippi River. Now, tall grasses grow on the prairies, as the pictures we saw. Animals feed and hide in the grass. There are few trees. The Indians could get water from rivers. In some places, rivers web through the plains. The climate is challenging because some days are brutal with ice and snow and wind, and other days are nice and balmy. Farming is difficult because this region has such a challenging climate. The land is important. The homes, though, here we see describing their homes. The Plains Indians live in teepees. The homes were made from animal skin. They could knock down the teepees and load them onto two poles, and this made it easy to move. Now, what did the Plains Indians hunt and eat? The Plains Indians mostly hunted buffalo. Buffalo are fine for hunting for 3 reasons. They are good to eat, they are rich in protein, and there are millions of them, and they are not smart animals. The Plains Indians built their homes with buffalo skin. The pale skinned men traded horses with the Indians. They can now travel far distances and move across the plains. Now they can hunt the buffalo. What natural resources did the Plains Indians use? And this is what was so amazing to me. Every single bit, it seems like. The Plains Indians built their houses with buffalo skin. They also made clothes and shoes from them. From the bones, they made awls. They used the dung for firewood. The best Indian knives are made of dark volcanic ash glass called obsidian, and they are sharper than steel knives and keep their edges longer. They use everything they could find. That's awesome. Until the white man came. And we're going to be discussing the difference and the influence. They became affluent. They lost their buffaloes. Okay? So as you think about the main idea, we've written that as the main idea, and think about each area, the Plains Indians' lifestyle and culture, as well as their livelihood and survival. We have a passage that sums that up. All right. So as we look at this passage, not only be looking for fragments, but be reading to see how it shows the focus of the Plains Indian lifestyle and culture, but also their livelihood and survival. The Plains Indians were resourceful. They used the land and natural resources around them to survive. According to the text, the Plains Indians lived in the center of North America in open grasslands. They stayed near water for drinking and fishing. The Plains Indians lived in teepees, were easy to move. The women would move the teepees when it was time to move to a different location. The Plains Indians mostly hunted buffalo. They also fished and ate berries. On page 43, the author said that the Plains Indians used animal bones and rocks for bows and arrows to build their teepees. They made rope with wool. They used skins for clothes and dung for firewood. It's amazing how resourceful they were, but we'll notice there are two fragments there. And so as we look at these fragments, let's think about what we can do to make that correct. Bear with me on this. We'll see if this will work. All right, so as we read through this, we speak and we might say we're easy to move, but as we read that, it didn't make sense. What was easy to move? Well, if we go back, oh yes, it works, good deal. What was easy to move? Well, the teepees were easy to move. And then also to build their teepees. Now, sometimes, as we've said before, when we talk, we don't always talk in complete sentences, but as we write, when we don't write in complete sentences, it causes our reader to be confused. So what exactly does the author mean by that? Well, to build their teepees. What about it? We're talking about the resources and things that they use. So they used wood and animal skins. To build their teepees. See how important it is when we add that information and we know there's no fragment. We see now a complete sentence explaining what's going on. Quite often we don't always see that when we write in fragments. As we become better writers, we use complete sentences and explain things more. So in this lesson, you learn about the lifestyles and the livelihoods of the Plains Indians. You also identified some main ideas and summarized the text. This has been an incredible section, lessons 1 through 5. I really enjoyed looking at different texts. We've looked at Before Columbus by Charles Mann. We've looked at Ice Age the video and enjoyed that. We talked about the first Americans with Joy Hakem, and we looked just briefly into our main text, The Birchbark House by Louis Erdrich. And as we continue to do this, we will look at ways that the Europeans and Christopher Columbus affected the Native Americans' way of life, and I think you're going to really enjoy seeing that in a fictional novel with the Birchbark House, how that affects our main characters and what's going on in that story. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson and I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much.